There's a Bible on the shelf by a new pack of cigarettes. There's a photo on the fridge of a family that's perfect. But the wall full of crosses in the dining room, they've heard every argument we got into. There's a Bible on the shelf by a new pack of cigarettes. Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the live and the stories that can't be sold, they're more than a household. There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood with a fresh coat of paint and brand new hardwood. Bet there's pencil lines hiding on an old door frame that could tell you how tall I was when I turned it. There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood. Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the live and the stories that can't be sold, they're more than a household's morning, more than a house morning, more than a household's morning, more than a household's. My first steps on the kitchen floor, my first kiss outside the front door, my first drink even though I swore that I would never tell. Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the live and the stories that can't be sold, they're more than a household's morning, more than a house morning, more than a household's morning, more than a household.
Hey guys, it's Joe Carrell. I'm in the studio today to talk about something fun and new, and that is our buddy Cliff at Mäag has come out with a 2-channel microphone preamp called the PREQ2 that's a little different, and it has some we'll call it bells and whistles that a lot of other pieces don't have that make it very unique. I had the privilege last night of taking this downtown and recording a great young Americana artist here in Nashville. We have some drums, bass, various instruments going through it, and you guys will be able to download those multi-tracks, which is really cool. Before we go to, flash back in time to last night, I want to tell you guys a little bit about the piece. So let me just pick it up here and take a look at it. So at its heart, it's a 2-channel preamplifier, Class A, transformer-based, custom nickel transformers. So it's a very clean, fast-sounding circuit. It's not the type Don't think of it as the old school transformers that's squashing things. It's fast and modern sounding, but rich sounding, if that makes any sense. But we have some bells and whistles here. So of course we have phantom power, right? This line switch right underneath it, let me flip this around real quick, and you'll see we have two sets of inputs. We have mic and line. So let's say we have this in our rack and it's wired up to our patch bay and we want to use it as a mic pre. We just leave this in its standard position with the light off and we have two channels of mic pre with EQ, right? Or what if we're mixing and we want to insert Cliff's famous airband across our stereo bus? Boom, all of a sudden we bypass the microphone input section and go right to this EQ. So it can be a color box for our stereo bus, which I think is brilliant. Because who doesn't want, a stereo EQ with Cliff's world famous high airband in there? Okay, next right here we have our 20 dB pad. So if we have an ultra hot source, we can just pad that down so we're not getting any distortion on the input. Underneath that we have a high gain setting, which is really useful because if you have, let's say, an SM7B for a podcast, or you have some vintage ribbon mics that just take a ton of gain, you boom, insert that guy, and all of a sudden an extra 25 dB of gain. So you can really power some low-powered microphones. And I will say something about this circuit is it's extremely quiet. I was playing with it last night just to see. I used an assortment of different microphones that I know have different noise levels, and anxious to hear when I got it back in the mix room, and it is super quiet. Very impressed with the specs on this thing. And then right here we have our phase reverse, which of course is super handy. We have a high pass filter next to that, so we can take it in or out of line. And the high pass filter is continuously variable from 20 all the way up to 200. Okay, so that's really cool because we can combine that. Well, first of all, I think every preamplifier should just have that. There's just too much, almost every source has low frequencies that we just don't want. So let's cut it out on the way in so it's not building up as mud, as we're progressing through the record. All right, so next to that, we have a low frequency EQ. We can go from 0 to 8 dB of boost, and actually I think it's, 10 dB of boost. And here's our frequency points. We have 10 cycles, so very, very ultra sub. Then we have 40, 65, 100, 125, and 165 cycles. And this is a bell shape. So what that means is we can combine that with our high pass filter to really shape the bottom end the way that we want it to appear. Next to that, we have the button, of course, that engages the EQ section. All right, so now this is just one of my favorite things ever, Cliff's airband. So we can go from 0 to 10 dB of gain, just like we could before, but we have our shelving filter up here that starts at 2.5K, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 40. I know what you're thinking. Why would I need 40,000 cycles on an EQ? It's almost one of those things you just have to try. You just trust me, though. If you turn this to 40 and you jack up this on a vocal or a vocal group or even your stereo bus, you just get this air that's it's a colorful air that's just beautiful and clean. It's hard to describe. That is interesting in and of itself, right? We get Cliff's EQ, we get this preamplifier with so many options. But here's something else that's extremely cool. We have an input on the front for an instrument. And you're like, well, I've seen that before. However, you can pair these guys with something like this. And here's what you can do. This is an active output that buffers everything down to like a reamp level. So we can send this, and it's op amp powered. So we can drive, long distances. For example, if this is in our control room and we want to send a signal out to an amplifier out in the studio, this can drive it like a long way cleanly. And this output is active at the same time as our other output is active. So we can record our clean vocal, and we can, record the vocal through a guitar amplifier or a Leslie or whatever we want to do. So it's just a very unique box. I'm really impressed with it. But enough of that. Let's flash back in time to last night when we recorded and just see it in action. And remember, enter to win. Down below, enter to win. What are you going to win? That lava lamp. Just kidding. I'm never going to give away that lava lamp. Maybe you're going to win something like this right here. So be sure and enter to win. What I'm going to do first is we only have 4 channels. So I'm going to capture the drums with the kick, snare, and overhead. So we're going to just dial in some sounds and have a good time. By the way, everyone, this is Leah. She's going to be assisting me today. Thank you, Leah, for your help. And we have Matt. Could you do me a favor and stomp on that kick drum? So here is the kick drum. Let's see, to pad off. Gain that up. Okay. Let's dial in some low end. So let's go down here to 65. Oh, you got to turn the EQ in right here. Okay. Let me dial that in. Trying to move my fingers where you guys can see it. Now I'm getting it. There we go. Now let's see. Let's talk about what we want to do on the high end. Let's go down to 2.5 and let's just lift from there. Let's try that. I'm going to switch it to 5 just so I can hear. Yeah, it's a little too shiny. This, again, this is kind of a folky thing, so I'm not going to try to make this a big rock drum. Not going to do that. We're going to leave the high pass filter completely off. Make sure the high pass is out. We do have a high pass filter here, as you can see, that we can engage, but you know, this is a kick drum, so we don't want that. Nice. I think that's working for me. If you will, just play a kind of a kick, snare, hat groove. Leah, would you solo up the snare drum for me? How about some snare top? Is that? Let me see. I do have. Okay, let's try this. How am I doing there on my level? A little hot? How's that? I need a little more volume in the control room here. Okay, we are going to engage the high pass filter on the snare, and I'm going to take it up to around, if that's 60 and that's 200, let's go up about here. It's probably somewhere around 80. Now let's go to 100, maybe, let's start with 100. Let's gain that up. Oh yeah, we have to turn the EQ on. I keep forgetting to do that. Oh yeah. Nice. Let's go up to 165 just so we can hear the difference. I like all of that. I'm gonna go to 125, I think. Let's just stop there. Now let's add some snap. Let's start at 5K and see if that's too low. Let's add some snap. That's actually working pretty good right there. Here's 10K. Yeah, it's too much air, not enough of the attack on the head. There we go. Let's start there. A little too bright, possibly, for what we're doing. I'm gonna back that down just a little bit. About 3 dB is what I've got going on. And on the bottom end, I've got about 4. And Leah, would you arm the kick track again? On the kick drum, I ended up with 5 dB at 65 and ended up with 5 dB at 2.5 cycles. Let's start there. Now let's move to the overhead. Would you give me just the overheads and turn off the kick and snare for me? Is that the overheads? So let's gain them up quite a bit. I have the pad on the mics. Maybe I shouldn't have. Let's see. Let's engage the EQ. That's what I said, they're all the way down. That way I won't forget again. All right. So let's see. You know what? We do have a high gain setting. Let's try the high gain setting. There we go. Is that too hot, Leah? Well, I can't back it down. Well, you know, I could. I am close to the top. Well, let's take this out then. Let's just do it that way. Okay. Let's see, left and right. Just gonna bring I'm not in the sweet spot. I'm gonna need you to help me tell me. Is that good? Okay, I've got the 84s up, which are not that bright of a mic, but let's go ahead and let's high pass it up to around 80, what I think is 80. And then what we will do, let's take the bottom and set it to around 100. And let's add a little, just see if we get any more good stuff down there. Let's try 125 actually. I'm gonna really gain it just so we can hear it. Ooh, yeah. Nice. Just digging some body out. Now I don't need it for this, but it's definitely doing it if I wanted it. So on the top, let's do 10K. And let's start lifting. We'll go too heavy just to kind of hear the circuit. Okay, that's about 6.5 dB, which is too much, but it's such a smooth high end. I just love the airband. Let's go with about 3 dB, see if that's too much. Let me check one thing. Hey, do me a favor and play your ride cymbal and a crash cymbal, and not just the hat. Is that changing my input? Do I need to trim a little? I may trim that gain down on the body just a little bit on the airband, the top. This is the airband right here. I was getting them confused just because it's making that ride cymbal just a little dark, just a little woolly. Okay, put the kick and snare in with it. All right, just the kick and the overheads. Let's make sure the kick is in phase with the overheads. I think that's better. I'm not in the sweet spot of the room. I hope it is. We'll know when we're listening back. Okay, now would you do the snare in the overheads, Leah? Let's check the snare. So the kick for me is kind of the foundation of everything, so I'll flip all the phasing according to the kick. Okay, that got worse, so that's better. So that's proper. So we'll just flip the phase on the overheads, and then the kick and the snare are right. You know, that's just all based on the difference of how far the overhead microphones are. If they're lower, just a couple inches, they may be in phase, but we needed to flip the polarity for them to be the best they could be at this positioning. So let's, let's put the kick and the snare and the overheads together. Kick back just a touch. Cool, thank you very much. Hey guys, so we've had a change of plans. They decided to play brushes. So we're gonna have to gain, we need more gain, right? So let's see if I can see the snare top. Yeah. And we're gonna need the overheads a little bit more. That's more. See if I can keep my balances the same. Yeah, I definitely need more. That's not bad right there. Let's stop right there. All right, that'll work for me. Thank you so much, guys. All right, let's roll one at 74. Okay, we have an upright bass today, as you've seen, so let's dial that in. Play for me, Isaac. On the bottom mic, we're not gonna do any compression or anything. We're just gonna dial this up, and I always watch my input in Pro Tools because I know where -18 is, which is analog unity. That looks about right there. Let's see, let's try on the EQ. Oh, that is with EQ. Let me take the EQ out because that was left over from what we had last time. Didn't sound bad though, did it? And I remember I could always hit the high gain setting and get more if I want, because it looks like I'm way up towards the top, but I could get an extra 25 dB if I wanted it. But I like that. Let's just start there. Yeah, why not? And let's, can I hear the neck mic, Leah? neck mic only. Yeah, let's do use the high gain setting on that. Yeah, see, it's got more articulation, not as much body. And I'm not gonna high pass, I'm not gonna use the EQ at all. I'm just gonna let it go straight to tape, take that high pass out. All right, put the two together for me. Let's make sure the phasing is really good and accurate. When I hit this, it should just about disappear. Oh yeah, there we go. So that's good. Now, turn the neck down a little bit. All right, let's start there. Now let's get the acoustic. Thank you, Isaac.
No problem.
Isaac, all right, so Max, play the acoustic guitar for me. All right, let's dial in the acoustic guitar. Here we go. Let's start gaining this up. And I'm watching the meters inside of Pro Tools, making sure. Okay, that's not bad. Let's do, you know, although it sounds, I'm in a weird spot, but let me go switch. Okay, yeah, I got a little phasing issue. I think we must have a cable that's wired out of phase or something. Yeah, that fixed that. All right. Now let's do engage the high pass filter and cut everything below about 80 just for safety. We don't need any of that puffy stuff bouncing around down there. Now let's turn the EQ on. Let's go up to 125. And well, I already had a gain on. So here's flat. I like that better. A little bit of, this particular guitar needs a little body. So let's go about 4 dB at 165. Now I know we all love Cliff's air band, so let's just give it a listen here. Yeah, that's way too much, of course. That is pretty. For this song though, let's start around 3 dB. I'm gonna go up to the speaker so I can hear it in the sweet spot. I'm actually gonna cut that air band down to about 2, just for the moodiness of this song. We're not really looking for an overly bright thing. Let's start there. All right, let's put the bass and record with it. All right, thank you so much, Max. You guys ready to track one?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. All right, guys, let's get the sounds on the piano. Here we go. Hey, John, play for me. So I'm gonna gain, just like we do on everything else, I'm just gonna gain it up until I see the level in Pro Tools that I want. Because I keep the meters set to -18 inside of Pro Tools, so I know when I'm at analog 0 for my sweet spot. That looks pretty good right there. Now, let's engage the high pass filters. We don't want any of that mud that's down there. Let's get everything below set like 70 cycles or so. Let's just get it out of there. On the bottom end, it feels pretty warm already. You know, this song is kind of a moody song. I'm probably not gonna add a lot of high end, but just so we know what that piano, what that air gain sounds like, let's engage the EQ here. And let's gain that up. Boy, that does sound good on a piano, doesn't it? Yes. Nice. But, based on the mood of this song, I'm gonna probably go down, let's just add like a dB of it, just so we say we added it, right? It's too good not to have any of it. That's working for me. Let's start there. Thank you, John. Hey, if I can have the steel guitar, why don't you play for me there, Lucas? Gain that up. Steel guitar players, you gotta watch them. The level they send you versus the level they play are rarely the same. Now, those guys, I tell you what, they like to mess with us engineers. Let's do the same thing. Let's take everything below like 100 cycles out. We do not need that on steel. For fun, let's engage the EQ, go down to 2.5. Let's boost that, see what it sounds like. So if this was a more upbeat, busier track, you know, a more modern country thing, I would probably use some of that 2.5K, but I'm gonna turn it down to about right there for this song, because again, it's just a kind of a moody thing. Let's start there on both of them. Okay, let's dial in the vocal. We got her in the booth.
There's a Bible on the shelf by a new pack of cigarettes. There's a photo on the fridge of a
Check
family.
the output on the compressor. I'm gonna tickle it with in a little LA2A style. Not a lot. Is she coming up? Where's she coming up?
There's a Bible on the shelf by a new pack of cigarettes. But I didn't know I did.
Let's start right there.
The things you see.
Man, she's got a great voice.
And it
Let's
wasn't
high pass
easy
it.
in the beginning.
Just for safety, going to tape, make sure all the plosives and the bottom end
Sometimes I
junk isn't there. The EQ is out. And you know what? Based on what I'm hearing,
but the laugh and the
she's on a 47.
Can't be so.
I hate to do anything to that. That sounds so good. I mean, I would be possibly tempted to add a little body in the bottom, just since we're experimenting. Let's do that.
There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood.
Okay, that's too much. Let's turn that down a little.
With a fresh coat of paint and brand new hardwood.
I'm gonna leave it at 2 dB. I'm gonna walk up the front of the room where the speakers actually are, so I can make a good judgment here.
Tell you how tall I was when I turned it. There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood. Well, I didn't know
Turn the piano down a little bit, please.
more
Number
than
two,
the
maybe.
things you see. And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing. But the laugh and the living, the
That's a good vocal sound right there. She's got a great voice. Let's start right there.
More than a house.
Great. Are you comfortable with what you're hearing?
Yeah, I feel good.
The live room with the drummer, Martirano, right? Nice, nice. That's an interesting last name. Well, what we have going on today is we have Cliff's PREQ2 on the kick, we have it on the snare top, and we have it on the overheads. We're going to go ahead and capture these other things just for fun, because we're going to do a couple extra songs tonight after this filming. But that's going to be what we have going on. And when you download the multi-tracks, just so you know, we're going to have the Lawrie 640 Rex on the kick. On the snare, we have good old 57s top and bottom. On the tom-toms, we have AKG 414s. And on the hi-hat, we have the Lawton Audio LA120. And then on the overheads, we have 84s. And on the rooms, you probably can't see it, but we have the Lawrie 840 tube mics in Omni. So that's what you will hear when you download the multi-tracks. Being that today is kind of a folky, Americana, bluegrassy, country, whatever we want to call it kind of thing, we're going to have upright bass. And we've got the Signal Arts 47 here, and I'll be aiming at the bridge, just off to the side. Here's the F-hole, here's the bridge, it'll kind of be in there. And then up just a little higher, I'll have the Warm Audio 84 to capture the fretboard, just in case we need a little more articulation. On the piano today, it's a Yamaha C7, so those are kind of a bright piano. So I have kind of a dark microphone. I wasn't sure, that we wanted a bright sound. I've got the AKG 414s. They're not overly bright, and that way if I do want some top end, I can add some of Cliff's Airband. I thought that'd be a lot of fun. So they're in a spaced pair, kind of equal distance from middle C, and it just gives a great stereo image of the piano. On acoustic guitar, I have the Lawrie 640s. I've really fallen in love with these microphones. They're in a spaced pair in cardioid. This one will be right around the neck and the body where they meet, 12th fret area. And this guy will be just off the bridge, a little lower, capturing the wood of the guitar. And between them, I can get a nice stereo image, because they'll be in perfect phase. Or I can use either one of them by themselves, and it'll sound great. So it's just a good kind of if you don't know what the day is going to be throwing at you, that's just a good, safe setting for a lot of things. All right, let's talk about the mix a little bit. First of all, I'll just say I love this song. What a visual. You can see this story playing out. Gloria is an amazing vocalist. This is Gloria Anderson, by the way. You can look up her on Apple Music and Spotify. Gloria, thank you so much for bringing the boys out and doing this for us. All right, so let's talk about the mix just for a second. For this kind of a song, it's all about the vocal. I mean, it's all about conveying this story to the listener. It's not about guitar licks. It's not about drums. They're just there to support the telling of the story. So that said, the drums, some of us that are watching this or whatever probably work a lot of times in genres, pop, rock, modern genres where the drums are hitting and slapping. And I do a lot of that too. That's a big chunk of my business. But I'm going to play you the drums in verse 2 here, and you can just kind of hear that the kick drum is very unpowerful. It's not supposed to be. We don't want that thump hitting the listener in the chest, knocking them backwards. I'll put it this way. When I'm mixing, sometimes I get this visual picture of I'm wanting to push the listener back in his chair with power. Bam! And there's times where I want to suck them in. I literally want them to be leaning into the song, leaning towards the speakers. And that's this. And one way to do that is kind of to leave the transient information like drums and punch, that drums have, very subdued. For example, let me just play you the drum package as a whole. So the powerful part, and it's not powerful, is the backbeat, right? So we're identifying the tempo for the band, for the listener. Here's the backbeat. But the kick pattern is very, very round. It's kind of pushed back. And again, it's all about sucking the listener in. So that's something to pay attention to when you're mixing some really organic genres, is not to overwhelm them with power, because that's what we're used to doing, when we watch a video of a Green Day breakdown or something like that. Okay, let's talk about upright bass guitar. Upright, acoustic bass is really boomy. Some instruments more than others. There's instruments that are very, just like any other instrument, that's cheap, and there's instruments that are extremely expensive. And so it kind of varies on how much low end thump and woof certain notes really can just make the instrument just really go off. And a big powerful tool for me for that is multi-band compression. Let me just let you hear the body mic by itself. Let's go to chorus 2. Now, when you download the multi-tracks, you'll get 2 mics. You'll get that, the body, but you'll also get the neck. That's just out of habit that I record the neck. Didn't even use it on this mix. We're not looking for articulation to hear fancy played runs. Okay, so what I did in the mix is I used a little tape emulation here with Crane Song Phoenix. I used the dark mode, so it's the most round of all of them, okay? But here is the guy I want to show you, multi-band compression. So I've got it set to around 250 cycles as the crossover. So, with the curves and everything included, it's kind of 200 cycles and below that are being mostly affected. But I want you to watch the gain reduction in the low end, and it's not touching the high end. So we're just kind of tightening that bottom end and keeping it under control. Okay, so we're getting as much as probably 6 to 8 dBs of compression on the bottom end, and it's a tighter sounding instrument now. Okay, that's what I'm trying to achieve as they're playing from verses to choruses, bridges, various things, and they're in different registers. When the low end kicks in, I don't want it to just get all of a sudden the mix to get flappy and just really and the rest of it be not really have a lot of low end. I want just a nice consistent package, and multi-band compression does that. Very minor EQ. You see I'm just dipping out a little bit of, what is that, probably around 180. I mean, and just barely, and also boosting 100. Probably could have actually done without this EQ. But the filters for me on upright bass and even electric bass are a big deal. So I've got this set probably around 50 cycles on the low end, and on the low pass filter, I'm cutting everything below about 7K. We don't need any sizzle and air on a bass guitar. In fact, I could probably go lower than that. I was just trying to keep a little of the articulation. I remember I was darker at one time, and I feel like I lost just a little of the fingering that I wanted to hear, to know that it's an upright bass, that it's organic, and that it's acoustic. And then just a touch of compression, because I track this with 0 compression. So when you download these files, you're going to hear basically that instrument and that microphone going through Cliff's preamp, and it's raw. That's the whole idea. I wanted you to hear it unprocessed. But that said, just a touch of this, and this particular unit The reason I like to pull this out from time to time, in hardware or software, it's a colorful unit. It's got just a little bit of hair, a little bit of distortion. And I thought that helped this part kind of pop out a little bit, just a little more articulation that wasn't based on frequency, but just grit, okay? Let me show you before and after. Bypass. Okay, now with. So yes, it's a little more dynamically controlled, but I think you're hearing just a little bit of grit that on its own may seem ugly, but when you place it in the mix, that grit is really helping the instrument kind of find its way through the other stuff. Let's talk about one more thing lastly, and that is her vocal. Dang, that's such a great vocal. I'm going to play you just a little bit of verse 2, and I'm going to show you a couple things. On songs like this, we don't want to do the heavy-handed mixer thing. Sometimes less is more. In a lot of mixes, I'm compressing really hard. I mean, that's what that genre needs. This genre, we're trying to convey the story. To convey that story, the vocal needs to move around. It needs to be free when she gets loud to seem loud. I mean, it's okay if not every word is like this. And in fact, it needs to be. This is going to sell the emotion of the song for it to be a little dynamic. But we still have to rein it in a little bit, and we also have to pull the tone of great analog circuitry, or in this case, plugins that are modeled on analog circuitry. So let me show you what I have going on here. I will make her dry, and I've got just a little bit of tape emulation. Okay, I've got multiband compression, and let me show you what that's doing. Okay, here's in bypass.
There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood with a fresh coat of paint and brand new hardwood.
Okay, much in the way that I treated the bass guitar, you can hear that she's da-da-bum-ba-da, da-da. So it's a little rangy, So what I can do is I can pop on multiband compression and keep her vocal in a more contained spot within the mix without that. Watch the low frequencies, especially as she dips in.
There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood.
So you'll see on theirs and the low end pumps, and then when she's up in her normal register, which is a little more mid forward, that more presence band, we'll call it, is compressing just a little bit, which is making it sound a little thicker, right? So when she's down here like this, I'm thinning it out. But when she's pushing and through her mid-range, I'm knocking that back a little bit so her tone stays thicker. So I just call this a tone corrector, really. EQ, not very much going on. Just a little bit of a dip, little bit of, there was just a little bit of an ugly thing. I hate to even call it ugly because her voice is so pretty. At around 600 cycles, tiny bit of air. And other than that, just filters. This song, dynamic, right? So there's just a little compression on this, but it was mostly about bringing up the expander part on the bottom, because there's ends of some of her phrases where she's very tender and very soft. And I'll show you what that's doing.
There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood with a fresh coat of paint and brand new hardwood.
So the tails of the words like good and hood are staying up a little bit more, and which is, making that come to the front of the mix, keeping it in the front of the mix just a little bit. For flavor, this is a really colorful box here, and it only takes a couple dB of compression, and I'll let you, I'm gonna bypass it. I'll play a part where, let me just go up here where her vocals are closer together. I'll unbypass it just so you can hear the difference, okay?
Bet there's pencil lines hiding on an old door frame that could tell you how tall I was when I turned 8. There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood. Well,
it looks like I'm bouncing around between 2 and 4 dB of compression. So I'm getting the tone of that, but more importantly, she's still able to, so it sounds modern, it sounds rich and compressed, but it's still very dynamic as well. Lastly, a little de-essing, and one more little trick here, and this is such a great tool for this, Waves C1. Sometimes on male and female vocalists, the same, you get certain frequencies that cut through the mix a little bit too much and make it sound a little too aggressive on a song that we want to sound nice and pretty. And let me show you what I'm doing. I'm cutting out a little 3,100 cycles, but I'm not cutting it out all the time. It's only when that range gets kind of hot, this is tucking it back just a little bit. I'll let you see what it's doing, and I'm going to solo up what it's looking for, okay?
Bet there's pencil lines hiding on an old door frame that could tell you how tall I was when I turned 8. There's a house on the market in my old neighborhood.
So you see it was bouncing around. At times it was doing nothing. Other times maybe 2 dB. So it's just making her voice just a little prettier, pulling the listener in a little bit more without anything harsh affecting them. Okay. Lastly, let's talk about reverb, because I really like the reverb patch that we have going here.
Bet there's pencil lines hiding on an old door.
Let me let you hear it in the mix.
Bet there's pencil lines hiding on an old door frame that could tell you how tall I was when I turned 8.
Let me show you what that is. This is something I have been using for a little while on certain songs. Seventh Heaven, so think PREQ Cassidy style. I think it's the Ice House patch, which is kind of a big patch. But what I do is it just sounds so rich. I cut it down to fit, vocals and things like that instead of like huge orchestral passes. So on here, it's only a little over 1.5 seconds, but it sounds bigger than that, doesn't it? And then just kind of, EQ it to taste, and let me show you.
Bet there's pencil lines hiding on an old door frame that could tell you how tall I was when I turned 8.
Cutting everything below 7 and a little above 300 cycles, leaving it a little bit more in the mid-range. But I wanted just a little bit of that air, so that's why I left it up to 6K. But anyway, that's a little bit of insight into the mix. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. We had a great time last night. I hope you had a good time watching this. And guys, thanks so much for Cliff and the guys at Mäag for sending these over. We had a great time using them. But remember, it's not just us that got to use them. These multi-tracks are available for download, so you guys get to hear these in action on kick drum, snare drum, overheads, bass, acoustic guitar, piano, steel guitar, that amazing vocal. You guys are going to get to download these, hear that EQ and that preamp in action, but more importantly, also practice your own mixing chops on this genre and a vocal of that caliber. So I'm anxious for you guys to download these and get your hands on them. Thanks again for watching, and happy mixing.